And here to talk about the Miami Dolphins is longtime Dolphins fan Brandon Berns. I wanted to just ask you, how did you become a Miami Dolphins fan?
Well, I think for me, it was kind of instilled in me from birth. My dad was a Miami Dolphins fan as well. So he was born there in the 60s. So when he was growing up, was right in the prime time years for the Dolphins when they had Greasy, Zonka, Kick, the 72, 73 teams, the undefeated team. That was right when he was growing up. So for me, I just kind of, I was born in there in the mid 80s. That's right when they had, drafted Dan Marino. And, when I was first born, they did get to that Super Bowl. And then, from there on out, it was, the best quarterback in the NFL, arguably at that time, set all the records for yardage. And they had Shule, the winningest coach. So, for me, being from Eastern Pennsylvania, I was kind of always going against the grain when we looked at all the sports teams, not only being a Dolphins fan, but also being a Mets fan as well on the baseball side. So it was kind of the, hey, I'm the outlier to all my friends who were Eagles and Phillies fans as well. So,
what is the biggest Dolphins moment? Excluding all the love they got on Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Well, I think for me, the play that I remember is obviously, the spike against the Jets. I would say, when I was growing up, that was, the big play, especially with Marino, kind of growing up and, always seeing those battles with Kelly in the playoffs and, having those, different opportunities to where, hey, he was setting all the records. And then, more recently, you think back to that Patriots play, when, Gronkowski couldn't tackle Drake going into the end zone in the Miami Miracle. But then I also, always remember back to, the Leon Lett play. I remember that I was at my grandmother's, in Danville, Pennsylvania, and, seeing, Leon Lett kick the ball and Stojakovic then, kicking that field goal through on Thanksgiving when it, was icing in Dallas that day.
What were your expectations for this team?
I think, just seeing what they did in free agency and especially around the draft, bringing in, obviously, Hill was a big piece. Pretty solid defense coming back from last year and that they kept the defensive coordinator. I thought, for the most part, that second half of last year, the defense kept us in a lot of games. So, really, if we were able to get that offensive coach, keep the, perspective and, really have somebody that was in Tua's, good graces and really kind of, look to really promote him and, his talents that he did have. And then, to really see, hey, we went out and got Mostert, in free agency. We went out and got left tackle in Armstead. We, signed a new center. The offensive line was the biggest thing that really let us down a lot of times, as we kind of looked at last year as well. So, bringing in those two pieces and, having Hill as well, was a huge, huge piece. And then, so I think, my expectations, going into the season, all really, resided on Tua because, if he was able to, perform, which, he did early on in the season, you saw with that team, that offense ran, they were clicking, they were scoring points, and, they were off and running in the early part of the season when Tua was healthy.
Was there a point in the season you were definitely confident that the Dolphins are getting into the playoffs?
I think after that Sunday night game when we beat the Steelers, I believe we were right around 8-3, leading the division. I think we were number one in the playoffs. I think at that point there was no really way that we could have screwed that up to say, hey, we aren't going to make the playoffs. As we see with this team, we win 3, we lose 3, we win 5, we lose 5. So I think streaky is to the nth degree the name of the game, but I think that also goes back to a lot of the just issues we've had health wise. I think with a lot of the players. Tua is the main one that everybody will kind of see as we kind of look through the season. But, Armstead, I think, in the last couple of games, I think he's had 4 or 5 different ailments, as he's been listed on the, injury report. I know Hill has kind of had an ankle. Waddle's had an ankle here and there. I know Mostert just broke his thumb, most recently. So, it's kind of one of those things where, hey, can we get the full team and the full allotment? Because even on the defensive side, I don't think Byron Jones has really played with, this season. He was a big free agent acquisition a couple of years ago at cornerback. And so, really kind of just looking through those pieces to where, we haven't really, had those, full complement of, hey, everybody's healthy to see what the team can fully do outside of maybe a 1 or 2 game stretch that we had mid-season.
What was the point that led you to be concerned about them not making the playoffs? Just a Tua injury? Was it other issues about consistency?
I think, as we kind of looked at the season, I know especially here, more recently, obviously the Buffalo game was a big game. They played really well with Buffalo. That could have been a coin flip either way. I think that the defense really let us down. But I think, for me, really kind of looking at the Green Bay game, I think was my kind of concerning point to say, hey, we had the Patriots yet, we had the Jets yet. Is it that fact of, hey, we got to win 1 out of 3? Knowing that, the gauntlet we had to go through with San Francisco, with, the Chargers, get through Buffalo again, that's going to be a tough stretch. All those guys are playoff teams, but then, seeing, hey, can we win those games that we needed to win, i.e., beating the Packers, beating the Pats, we, handled the Pats in the season opener, kind of looked a lot different, but then, as we saw then as well, with Tua getting hurt, Teddy Bridgewater for the 2 games that he kind of played, I don't think he finished either of those games as well. And then, being down to a rookie third stringer then in Skylar Thompson, who, last Sunday didn't really light the world on fire, versus the Jets, as we saw with the final score and, field goals and a safety. So
Who do you think, even though the brackets are already out, the Dolphins match up the best with in the AFC playoff bracket?
I think, kind of seeing that Miami's played a majority of the teams. I mean, we've, had that miraculous comeback versus Baltimore, early on in the season. We split with Buffalo. I think we played, pretty poorly at the Chargers when we had them on Sunday night. So, kind of looking at it, I think it's very, very tough, as we saw in NFL history, to, play a team 3 times. So I think, if we were going to have that first round matchup, as much as I don't want to see, Josh Allen across the way, but I think, Buffalo might be that matchup to say, hey, we have history with them. We know their personnel inside and out. And, I think if you're going to, go through everybody, you got to start and beat everybody anyway. So let's start with Buffalo and go that route. So
who's the team that scares you the most as a Dolphins fan in the AFC?
I think Cincinnati, just from their offensive perspective with Burrow and with Chase and Boyd and Higgins, and having Mixon as well. I think offensively, they're probably the scariest team out there, just the way they've been playing, and really, watching how they've been throwing the deep ball. I think Cincinnati is going to give everybody problems this postseason.
Was he your choice as the coach to replace Coach Flores?
For the rumors that kind of are out there, obviously I thought, Ross was going to go with the big hire and try to go after Harbaugh again. You heard the things going, back and forth with trying to get Peyton from the Saints. But I think, for the offensive perspective and kind of the personnel that we have, I think his offense has definitely ran the correct way. I mean, I think for the most part, he's very, very blunt as well to kind of say, hey, this is what's working, this is what's not working, which is refreshing when you kind of look at that coaching perspective. And I think, for the most part, the guys really, attach themselves to him. Everything that you read, that you don't really see many players saying anything bad about him. So, from that side of things, obviously a first-year head coach, but, I've been impressed with what he's done so far.
Who do you have coming out of the NFC? What's the final score and who?
Yeah, so I think ultimately, I'd love to see the Dolphins get there. I think, being the 7th seed, it's going to be a very, very hard road to get through a potential run of Buffalo, Kansas City, and probably Cincinnati. But, realistically looking at it, I think, Miami might be about a year away, get everybody healthy, and depending on, I think really who's our quarterback going into it. Is Tua allowed to come back and play? Are we looking at potentially Skylar Thompson playing? Realistically, though, I'm probably thinking it's probably going to be a Cincinnati versus Philadelphia Super Bowl. And I will go back just to have my friends in Eastern Pennsylvania be able to celebrate and see the chaos that might happen in Philly again with those greasing up the poles. But I think we're going to have an Eagles Super Bowl win, probably 35-31 in the Super Bowl, and have a big shootout.
Before we wrap this up, any shout outs you want to give And is there a way people can reach out to you to discuss things and talk Dolphins football?
Oh yeah, obviously on Twitter at Brandon Berns. From that perspective, big things coming up. Obviously, I'm back in Division II athletics now with my alma mater in Slippery Rock. So, big things coming there. Hopefully next season for the Rock there in the football aspect. Our basketball team's off to a great start. So hopefully we'll be able to keep that rolling here through the rest of the season then as well. And biggest thing for me, as the next couple of months approach, obviously with the NFL playoffs going on, but I'll actually be getting married in about 2 months here as well. So we're in final prep mode for that big day from that perspective. So we'll be taking the final plunge there on that perspective. But from that side, love joining you today, Earl, and obviously from that perspective, would love to hear what everybody else has to say about their teams, and hopefully you and I are talking about a Dolphins Super Bowl victory come mid-February then.